All right, we're letting folks on the Zoom.
Good morning, everybody.
Jonathan, how are we doing? They coming in? They still coming in?
I think you are good to go for now.
All right, we're good to go for now. We may get a few more as the morning moves forward. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Boynton Beach Government Affairs Committee, sponsored by our good friends at FPL, with our very special guest, the Vice Mayor of the City of Boynton Beach, Ty Penserga. Before we get into the program, I'm going to turn the program over to Jonathan Porges, our teammate here who manages all the activity and does a great job for us in Boynton Beach. He'll give you a little housekeeping about how we're going to handle the Zoom. You're probably all pros by now. Then we'll come back. We'll hear from Sophia, and then I'll give an introduction to our guests. So, Jonathan, I'll turn it over to you for some ground rules.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. As you may know, the program is being recorded, and we'll send you a copy of this program afterwards. As Troy mentioned, we'll do questions for the Vice Mayor at the end of the program. And to do that, please submit them through our chat box. We do ask that during the program that you limit the chat. That way we can see the questions coming in and ask them to the Vice Mayor at the appropriate time. And so with that, I hope you enjoy it, and I'll turn it back over to Troy.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, we are May 28th, which means officially hurricane season starts in just a couple days. And we've been watching the storm systems out there and, thinking to ourselves, gosh, with what's been going on, wow, hurricane season on top of everything. Not only has FPL been an amazing partner to us, but this entire community, everywhere where they serve, they've provided support of in excess of $4 million in the communities that they serve for COVID. We know how good they are during hurricane season. We hope they never have to be that good, but they always are when we need it. And so Sophia Eccleston is with us. She's a board member on the Chamber Board, a great friend and partner for everything that we do. And so, Sophia, thanks very much, and I'll turn it over to you for some words.
Thank you, Troy. Good morning, everyone. As Troy mentioned, we are just a few days away from hurricane season, but as you can see what's been going on in the tropics, it's been a very busy, start already. There's been projected to be, I think, 19 named storms this season. To be honest with you, that's a lot of storm in a time like this. I mean, we're dealing with COVID, and if we have an active storm season, God forbid we have a storm, it's going to be unprecedented for us to be in an environment where we're social distancing and at the same time have to do storm restoration. So today I just want to talk real quick. I'm not going to take up a lot of time, but I just want to get everyone thinking about storm. I know everyone's thinking about so many other things going on with COVID, but storm season's around the corner and we have to be prepared, because if we get hit by a storm anytime during this pandemic, it's going to take some time for us to restore storm, because we have to change the way we're doing things. We're prepared at FPL. We've always had a pandemic team. We're always prepared, but we want everyone to be prepared as well. We're urging everyone, please start making your personal plans. If you have family members that needs to be evacuated, if they're in an area where during a hurricane they have to be evacuated, start thinking about what that's going to look like, where they're going to go. States may not let us in. I know a lot of time people get on the road and they're driving to different states. I don't know if they're going to let us in because of the pandemic. So those are the kind of things that you want to start thinking about, and start thinking about whether or not you have a generator. If you can afford a generator, try to get a generator, because we do have a restoration process at FPL. If power goes out, the first thing we have to do is to ensure that our facilities are okay. So once we take care of our facilities, then the next thing is to take care of critical infrastructures. And we work with municipalities in the county to ensure that they provide us with those lists. And so those things are like hospital, fire, police, so your power may not come on as quickly as you used to, and especially a lot of people are working from home right now. So please try to think about what your plan is going to be. Try to be prepared, and please feel free to reach out to us. And I'm sure the chamber will share this with you, but the state is going to have a tax-free day for hurricane preparedness. Please use that, because another thing is, if a storm hit and everyone is rushing to the store, remember, you're not going to be able to pile into the store like everyone typically do when a hurricane is coming. So keep those things in mind and just get yourself prepared, so that in the event that we have a storm, the damage is not as, is not as bad because everyone's prepared. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Troy.
Thank you, Sophia. This is so important that we have this perspective that you're sharing with us right now, because we're all very distracted by the virus. And you've got amazing technology with the power out trackers. We've sent that out to the membership. We'll continue to do that as well. People get a little nervous about that. You always provide excellent information on that resource as well. So Sophia, thanks for your leadership and for all that you're doing for us. During times of crisis, we always feel a lot better because FPL is in our community. So thanks very much.
Absolutely. And Troy, I have to jump off. I'm going down to Boca. We're about to present a kid with a check-in deal at a drive-by for him. So.
Oh, awesome. Well, good.
Yes. Yeah. So.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
I'll jump off. So thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Sophia. Drive safe.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye. All right. So now let's get to the main event here. Very special guest, Vice Mayor Penserga is with us. He's got an extremely impressive resume. I'm not going to read it all, but I think that there are some key points that if you didn't know about this young man, this servant of ours, that you need to know. So as I mentioned, he is currently now the Vice Mayor of the city of Boynton Beach. He's on his second term. For those of you who follow it, he filled a vacancy on the city commission in his first go around, and then he was reelected overwhelmingly in his reelection bid. The chamber and its PAC supported his candidacy very strongly, and so we are more than thrilled to see him continue to sit up at the dais on the commission. He is, by the way, a lifelong Floridian. He is an educator and he is a scientist, i.e. he's wicked smart, is what I would say from where I'm from. But he was born in the Philippines, raised right here in Palm Beach County, graduated from Temple University in Philadelphia. That's the other Owls. There's the FAU Owls, and then there's the Temple Owls where Mr. Penserga went. He earned his degree in chemistry and biology. While he was in college, he served as the senator representing the College of Science to Temple's student government. He received the prestigious Diamond Award for his leadership, community service, and creation of a longitudinal mentoring pipeline to uplift unprivileged teens. So clearly, early on in his life, we saw greatness in him. We saw leadership and servant leadership in Ty Penserga for sure. Prior to being elected, Vice Mayor Penserga returned to Palm Beach County to work as a high school teacher, teaching both chemistry and biology to hundreds of students. He later attended Florida Atlantic University to earn his master's degree in integrative biology and is currently working to complete his PhD in neuroscience, which means he'll be able to read all our minds, I think, at some point. As a scientist, he published his first research paper at the age of 17, and his most recent work of 2019 was published in the prestigious international journal Frontiers in Neuroscience. His research focuses on advanced imaging techniques to uncover the underlying pathology of Alzheimer's disease. As a public servant, his priorities include enhancing public safety through technology, promoting the construction of affordable housing, creating high-paying jobs and developing special economic clusters, reducing taxes, creating the quantum eco park, creating a vibrant and exciting downtown, eliminating slum and blight throughout the city, all the things that the Chamber of Commerce believes in as well. So we're so aligned in all of our priorities. Vice Mayor Penserga strongly believes that good governance, equitable growth, and a strong long-term vision are what will revitalize the city of Boynton Beach, bring prosperity to all residents, and put the city back on the map, which I think it's back on the map and headed in the right direction. Vice Mayor Penserga currently serves as board members of the Boynton Beach Redevelopment Agency, Quantum Parks Overlay Dependent District, South County Regional Wastewater Treatment and Disposal Boards. He also serves as a representative the Palm Beach County's League of Cities, and the Intergovernmental Coordination Forum. That's a little snapshot of our leader in Boynton Beach. And so with that introduction, Vice Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to you. And thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Troy, and to the Chamber for having me this morning. I know that Representative Casella was originally slated, but I'm always happy to jump in and talk about the city and give you all an update. And I just thought a good place to start is to give you a little snapshot of the city. And I want to give you some numbers. So, of course, I have to preface this by saying that this is a snapshot pre-COVID, because the reality is we don't know the full impact of COVID, and we probably won't know the full economic impact until probably a year or two from now. But I want to give you a few points that'll give you an insight into our future. So it's no secret, we're the third largest city in the county. Our population is growing. We are approaching 80,000 people. Our median age is around 40 years old, and that median age is really getting younger. And the reason why younger people are moving into the city largely has to do with housing. There's a lot of talk about affordable housing, and relative to our neighbors, Boynton is a housing haven. We're increasing capacity, and it's relatively more affordable. So more people are moving in, they're setting their roots here, they're starting families here, and of course, they're spending their money in the surrounding businesses. Now, you combine that with a progressively declining unemployment rate. So if I could show you a graph, you could throw down a ball on this curve, because it is a really nice slope downwards. In 2010, our unemployment was around 11%. 4 years later, that halves to about 5.5%. And just last year in 2019, our employment rate was 3.6%. So we have a very nice gradual decline. Of course, this is pre-COVID, and the full impact of that we'll start seeing in a year or two. So not surprisingly, crime is also going down. And if we look at the overall crime rate compared to, let's say, 2008 to now, that overall crime is down by 20%, right? So as employment goes down, not surprisingly, crime goes down. You add into this mix a very stable tax environment. Our millage rate has not changed, and it's better than going up, right? But it's a good thing to have some certainty. It hasn't changed in the last 8 years, and a lot of the commissioners now are the same people that set that path to remain stable, and that's a good thing. And eventually, there'll be a time in the near future when we can start to roll that back. So I think a few days ago, we just received a letter from the Dorothy Jack's office, the property appraiser, and it had some really good news. And one of the metrics I look at for the growth of the economic health of the city is the total valuation. Every year, it just gets bigger. And this year, we're at 6.6 billion total taxable value. It's not the only metric, but it's one of those metrics I look at. But a really important thing to note is that our year-to-year growth is very strong. So let me give you the exact number. So we were at 6.2 billion in 2019. We're now at 6.6 billion. And that represents a growth of approximately 6.5%. And that's a key number. 6.5 doesn't really make sense without context. So let me give you something to compare that with. If you took all the combined growth of all the cities in the county, the combined growth of all the cities in the county, that's 5.2%, and Boynton is solidly at 6.5%. If we look at the growth of unincorporated Palm Beach County, which is 5.5%, we are still above that. And so year after year, our growth rate has stabilized around 6 to 7%, and that's a good thing. And so the trajectory is upwards, the city is growing. Now, are things perfect? Of course not. There's certainly avenues that we can still work on. The median household income of the city is about $53,000. I think that's respectable, though it really needs to be higher, and we can get it up. I think we'll get there in time. But the bottom line here is that we have work to do. We're doing that, but the fundamentals are strong. Unemployment was going down, crime was going down, the tax situation is stable, total valuation is increasing, fundamentals are strong, and the trajectory is up. So these are all good signs about the city, and I know that we have lots of exciting projects, but all of that fundamentally comes back to those metrics that I mentioned. Now, you've all heard about the $1 million that we've allocated from the CRA, and we did that specifically for small businesses, right? So we had $1 million worth from the CRA, we had 60,000 from the city, and both of those programs specifically targeted small businesses, so 25 employees or less, which is a very good thing. And we made it one of the conditions that this money has to go to payroll. That's important because we want to keep people employed. What we don't want is, a trickle effect where people are getting laid off and they don't have health insurance and everything just cascades. So those are all good things, and you've heard about all of those. But today I want to mention a couple of new things. Not too long ago, and this is really preliminary information, so we're going to come back to you all with some more details next month. But really preliminary information, the city has received a grant from, this comes from the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, which ultimately comes from HUD and which was supplemented by the CARES Act. So we've received $350,000 in grant funding. Historically, CDBG goes towards improving housing, but also economic development. So this is all preliminary, and we're going to be bringing this to the commission for discussion. And from my conversations with staff, they're thinking about repeating another forgivable loan program at $10,000 increments. So we're going to be coming back to you with that. The guidelines are still to be determined. It's still to be approved by the commission. But I'm excited to know that, in addition to what we've done in the CRA in the city, in addition to what the county is doing, we're going to continue to give back to the community. Because ultimately, guys, another thing that we need to focus on is who is best positioned to survive COVID. And, obviously, COVID has impacted everybody. It is what it is, but we just need to set up our business community as best we can so we can make a rebound as quickly as we can. And Boynton Beach, we don't have a lot of corporate, we don't have large banks, we don't have large companies, but we do have lots of small businesses. That's kind of one of our hallmarks. So I'm so glad that additional money has been freed up, and looking forward to sharing the details once we have them. Part of rebounding economically is really about consumer confidence, and people are afraid, and people are gonna be afraid for quite some time. Even though we're going through these reopening phases, people are not spending, people are not going out, and that's understandable, right? Because that needs time until we get more testing data, until more information is available, and that's totally normal. But part of rebuilding the economy is about boosting consumer confidence. If people don't feel safe, they're not going to go out and spend. They're not going to want to go back to work physically. And so one of the programs that our city is coming up with, we're going to call it the Compliance Verification Program. And this is something that we're working with CareerSource for grant funding. And the idea here is that this grant funding will hopefully cover about 10 individuals for 3 months. And let's call these individuals ambassadors. So these ambassadors will go to restaurants, for example, and they will observe whether or not restaurants are in compliance. And if they are socially distancing, they've spaced the tables, they move some of them out to the back, to the sides, to perhaps their adjacent parking lot, and all things are looking good, we'll add them to a list and we'll advertise that, right? And what I've noticed is just that from my own neighborhood, we have, if some of you are familiar with the social website Nextdoor, my own neighbors have started to do that themselves organically. They've started a thread. Which restaurants are complying? Which restaurants do they feel safe going to? And so we're going to be doing this as well, and hopefully provide a few jobs in the process. And we can do this to restaurants, we can do this to parks, and help advise businesses on how they can better comply with CDC guidelines. And it's a win-win. And once we have that stamp of verification from the city. Hopefully that'll help encourage people to want to come back out and slowly and gradually, of course, to come back out and invest back in their city. Another area that I'd like to discuss is the Quantum Park Overlay District, because it really doesn't get discussed often. In fact, I think I may be the only one talking about it. So on this portion, the eastern portion of my district, closer to I-95, Quantum Boulevard, High Ridge, just north and south of Gateway, is what's known as the Quantum Park District. And it's its own taxing district. There's an assessment. And I'm really proud to report, so here's the background. So that's been an independent board for many years. And there's been lots of problems with, some allegations of this and that. And so last year, when I first got into office, the city commission took over the Quantum Park board. So we as commissioners, in addition to everything else we do, like the CRA board, we're also the Quantum Park board. We paid off all their debts. The 2008 and 2010 bonds have been all paid off. So that's a good thing. On top of that, last year, we also significantly reduced the assessment. Now, this area, this Quantum Park, it's manufacturing, industrial, and also residential. So, these assessments are on these residents, are on these businesses, and it's a per acre assessment. Prior to the commission coming on board last year, it was $2,381 per acre. And then when we came on, we reduced that by 61%, and now it's $934 per acre. And so I'm proud to report that we just passed a budget that maintains that, and we're going to keep it at that low number. And in a few years, in 2 years or so, we will be sunsetting the Quantum Park District altogether. The Quantum Park District, I think of it as like a really extra layer of government. And if things are managed properly, we may not even need it. And it turns out that we won't need it in a few years. So that $934 per acre is going to disappear altogether. And the question is, well, what are we using this money for? Why are we collecting any assessments at all? Well, that assessment, so I should, actually preface it by saying that the people who live in the Quantum Park, they've been promised in the very beginning this eco park, this massive eco park. And what a lot of people have not known, because it's not publicly, it's not public knowledge, it's not publicly accessible, but there is this beautiful and massive eco park along Quantum Boulevard in this area, just right across City Hall. And the residents who live in this Quantum Park have been promised this massive, beautiful park. But that money, that the assessment that's been being collected has never been invested in that park. So the money that we're collecting now, it's all being set aside as park funding. And I'm really excited because finally, we're going to develop a park. We've just created the first parking lot, which will also give access to the lake. There's a lake back there, and potentially there can be some kayaking. So there's conversations about a kayak ramp. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this will be the largest in the city. So I'm really excited about that. And so we've got funding through the assessment. And again, that's going to shut down in a few years very soon. And number two, there's a lot of opportunities coming up for naming rights. So please keep that in mind. So, from things like benches and whatever structures we're going to have there. So there's going to be lots of naming right opportunities. And in that area, again, this is right across City Hall. In that area, that City Hall building is also where NYU Langone Health is coming in. And they're already here. They're already on the second floor of the City Hall building. And as our City Hall staff vacates in the coming months, NYU Langone will be expanding. They're projecting about 500 positions, which is really, it's really exciting. And the median pay is about mid-50s. So these are all things that are going to boost our economy. It's going to add more people shopping in that area. So if you have a business in the Publix Plaza, for example, actually, I think Sunshine, right, is right there. So, there's going to be more people coming in and shopping and spending their money. Now, they're not going to hire all 500 this year. So it's going to be a gradual increase. And one of the things that I like about what's being designed here is that, parking spaces is always a big and controversial thing because people don't like seeing concrete. They'd rather see green spaces. And so what's happening is that the parking space for the Eco Park will double as a parking space for these employees for NYU Langone Health, because they're going to be working during the daytime, during the weekday, and during the weekends. It'll be then, when they're not there, then that same parking space can then be available to the public. And so I think that was a really smart design to have double uses of a space. So that's NYU Langone Health and the Quantum Park. There's going to be lots of savings because that's an assessment per acre. We know that there's CarMax over there, there's Publix, the brewery district is over there. So it is an expense on these businesses, and the larger the business, the larger their warehouse, the more they pay. Unfortunately, this will be going out very, very soon. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, we've talked about Town Square, and I've discussed it. I know lots of people have discussed Town Square multiple times, but I do want to highlight other projects that are happening on the east side of the city because I think they deserve attention and they're equally noteworthy. There are two projects or I should say within the CRA district, which is the east side of the city, that involve affordable housing. One of them is called Ocean Breeze East. And if you drive along Seacrest, you can see that there are these beautiful new structures that are up. And it is just unbelievable how quickly that the construction has gone. So we did the groundbreaking late last year. I think it was late November. And now you can see 4 independent buildings. They're 3 stories each. And these are affordable units. And that's something that's much needed in the community. So Ocean Breeze East is 123 affordable rental units in 4 buildings, 3 stories each. Of course, there will be recreational amenities, the landscaping, there's going to be some flex space. And when I say affordable housing, I mean that the monthly rents are based on this HUD matrix that's relative to the area median, the AMI, the area median income. And a related news to that is that the developer that we've been working with in the CRA, Centennial received this massive funding from the Florida Housing Finance Corporation to the tune of $2 million, a little over $2 million over 10 years. This is the so-called 9% low income housing tax credit program. And so that's money that the CRA doesn't have to contribute to making this project happen. So that's about a little over 20 million right there. So that's Ocean Breeze East, 124 units along Seacrest. And you combine that with what's happening on MLK, and this is relatively recent, but along MLK, the corridor, there's also going to be another redevelopment project, also by Centennial. It is going to be another 124 affordable multifamily apartments. There's going to be massive, and unlike Ocean Breeze East, there's going to be plenty of commercial and retail space. I think it's 9,000 approximately square feet of commercial space. There's going to be a little plaza, and of course there's parking and landscaping and all of those things. And just recently, this past month, we got a call from them saying that they also received more funding from the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, same program, these tax credits, to the tune of $14 million over 15 years. So they've got $14 million with this MLK redevelopment project. They've got over 20 million or so for the Ocean Breeze project. So that's a lot of savings. 30+ million savings in a CRA, and these are going to be really exciting projects because there is no doubt that housing has got to come first. And if you want to elevate people economically, they need stability, and that's what housing does. You know, as you all know, I'm a big fan of Habitat for Humanity. And the reason for that is because housing isn't just going to change that family's life. It's going to make sure that their kids can study better, that they have a safe place to do that. And so it's really going to change generations. So we have this model block project we're working on with Habitat and Boynton Beach Faith-Based CDC. There's 10 homes in this model block project. So there is a lot of housing coming up, but it's not just about luxury housing. And I'm really glad to know that our city is also focused on housing for the average person, for the average family, especially those that are trying to make their way up the ranks, because you do need these options if we want to elevate the community. So I'm really excited about that. Another story that's probably not getting enough attention is the historic Women's Club. I don't know if any of you guys have been there, but we've recently renovated it. I would say that the renovations are not done. Let's call it phase 1 renovations. The wood floors have been repaired. It's beautiful. All the water damage has been repaired. The kitchen is being redone as we speak. They've even tuned the piano. They've retuned the grand piano in there. So we have another historic site that will soon be available to the public. And can you imagine the events that's going to be there, from weddings to art events to trade shows? You know, lots of possibilities. And so we have the cultural center in the town square project, and we're going to be adding on this historic women's club to that network. So the important takeaway here for the women's club is not just that we've renovated the space, but the city has come to the CRA for a proposal to absorb the women's club as part of our new, our expanded cultural facilities. And so, you know, it's along Federal, and the plan is that in addition to the women's club, we're going to connect that with the senior center right across the street. We're going to create some crosswalks. We're going to eventually make some physical upgrades to the senior center. And so we've got these two spaces that will be working together. And the thing about the senior center is that the senior center is being used during the daytime, right? It's during the weekday and during the daytime. And events like weddings and whatever special events, they're happening typically on the weekends and usually in the evening. So it's not necessary for us to build so many parking spaces, because again, it's another example of taking the same space and using it for multiple purposes during multiple times. And that's a very good thing. So I'm excited about the Historic Women's Club. It's going to be available to the public to use and to rent for, you know, one of the proposed uses could be an art incubator. It could be where we have art events. And so we're going to be looking to hire somebody to manage that space very soon. But I'm very excited because, you know, it's an expansion of our cultural network, or at least that's what I like to call it. So lots of things are coming online, and the Women's Club will be one of those things. Another story, again, not getting enough attention, is the intersection of Ocean and Federal. I think that's kind of one of those pinnacle points of our growing downtown. And that intersection includes the famous 500 Ocean building. And the reason why this is noteworthy is that for many years, a lot of the storefronts on the first floor in 500 Ocean has remained empty. And that was a cause for concern. In addition to, you know, those retail spaces inside 500 Ocean, we have this famous Lucibella property, this historic home right next to it that's been renovated. But again, it also sat empty. So I'm excited to announce that I think essentially all of the spaces, I think there may be one more inside the 500 Ocean complex, they've essentially been filled. We've got the Butcher and Bar restaurant that's coming in. There is a beauty salon and spa coming in. There is a Colombian restaurant called Pio Pio. There's Guaca Go. And the Lucibella historic home has now been occupied by Chez André Provence, which is a very famous down here investing in the city. So you've got, collectively, probably 100 if not more jobs, and in addition to Hurricane Alley, which is a bustling place to be. So this downtown intersection, which is one of those pinnacle points in our downtown, is starting to boom. Now, this was all right before COVID, so it is a stress, and it's really important for these programs that we have, because we don't want to roll backwards. We finally have them filled. And the last thing we want is for these people to go out of business even before they start. So I'm glad that the CRA has been very supportive, and there's many more things that we can do to make it happen. But I'm glad that these spaces have finally occupants, and hopefully it'll send the message to the area that this is the place to be. Keep investing. And our downtown is only going to keep growing, and there's plenty of places to shop and eat, and it's all coming online finally. One of the last stories I want to tell you is because we have a massive powerhouse in Boynton Beach, and not a lot of people know that they're in Boynton Beach. Along High Ridge, I think this may be Commissioner Hayes' district, and it's right at the edge of mine. Along High Ridge, we have CarMax, we have the Publix Distribution Center, but we have a little nonprofit that's not so little called Feeding South Florida. And Feeding South Florida, as the name implies, they are probably the biggest food bank in the state and one of the top 10 in the country. And what they've done is just phenomenal. And I want people to know that we have a powerhouse like them right in our city. And so for many, many weeks now, I think we're at week 15, we have partnered with Feeding South Florida. We've partnered with Christ Fellowship, and together with the Boynton Beach Mall, we have organized week after week food distribution events. And every week we are serving about 800 families, if not more. And these are not one-time meal, folks, right? One-time meal, it's not a one and done thing. These are 800 families that are being fed with groceries, eggs, milk, frozen meats, vegetables from, there's pineapples and avocados and things like that. And it's going to feed the whole family at least for a week. And I'm really happy that this is happening. And what I'm really happy about here is it's a really good example of my belief of the role of government. Government can't do everything. I don't think government should be doing everything. There is a place for government, and there is a place for private institutions and community organizations. And so we've worked together to make this all possible. The city provides all the logistical support. The Boynton Beach Mall provides the space, and Christ Fellowship have provided a lot of the manpower. So let me give you some of the numbers. I told you about 800 families per week. And the cost to make that happen is less than $5,000. And so one of the roles of Christ Fellowship is that they're one of the sponsors, the financial sponsors. So for about like $4,000, $5,000, we're able to do this every week. Now, there's a very interesting story behind all of this, because for the longest time, we didn't know about Feeding South Florida. They've been growing. They've been doubling their output to 35 million pounds this year, and it's doubling every week. Just the weekly output is like around 1 million pounds of food. But they came together with us in the city because of the Community Caring Center. Now, Community Caring Center for the longest time was that organization that received a lot of attention because they were feeding the community, but they just were not scaling up. And so when they realized that one of their partners is right in the city, they started talking to each other and saying, hey, we're doing the exact same thing. We're both building industrial kitchens. We're both serving the community. Why don't we work together? And so the CRA in the past had allocated $300,000 for the CCC's, the Community Caring Center's job development program. And when they merged with Feeding South Florida, making everything just so much more efficient and not doubling their programs, when they merged, that money, the $300,000 that was originally slated for them, that became available. And that $300,000 was one of the primary sources of our small business grants from the CRA. So if you think about this, big picture wise, because of those decisions and the partnerships that have been made, you have food bank money, if you will, that's being used to prevent people from having to go to the food bank in the first place, right? Because we're now investing these in the small businesses, and these food banks, like Feeding South Florida, namely, are now building these industrial kitchens, and those kitchens are good for, their goal with that is to build these job training programs, culinary job training programs, and they're also going to help with job placement. So one of the examples I received was that they're going to be helping people once they have these new skills, but they're going to be helping people placing them in jobs like at the breakers. So that's really exciting because we really need that in the community. And just about 3 weeks ago, we organized the largest event in the country. We were serving 5,000 people. We had like 8 lanes of cars going through. It was all very efficient. And the reason why this is so important, guys, is not just because they're a local powerhouse. When you're hungry, like everything, nothing else really matters, right? If you're hungry, that's all you can think about. And so we had to begin with food, and we're doing everything we can to help our businesses and get people back to work. And so I think the city is really on an upward trend. Year after year, we are always going under budget, and we're putting money into our reserves. So these are all good signs, and I'm really excited for what's to come in the city. So with that, I'll end, and I'll just end by saying that the future is bright for Boynton. Yes, we have COVID, but we have done everything we can to position ourselves to rebound as quickly as possible. And thank you so much for inviting me and for all of your support.
Vice Mayor, thank you very much. That was an awesome report. Maybe this is the bad use of terms, but I mean, Boynton Beach is on fire. It is moving in the right direction, boldly, I think rapidly, and certainly COVID has, for all of us, sort of dampened some of these awesome initiatives that are going on in the city of Boynton Beach. But we share your excitement of all the things that you just talked about. As a Chamber of Commerce, we are excited to be a part of Boynton Beach and the growth of Boynton Beach. Before we get to some questions, because there are some, I do want to recognize your colleague, Commissioner Hay, did join us this morning. So Commissioner Hay, thank you for getting up. I see you're on the call. Thank you. And
good morning, Commissioner.
And glad to have Woodrow Hay back on the commission in Boynton.
Yes. Good morning.
And then our good friend David Scott, the
Good
Director
job, Todd.
of Development and Strategies, also with us again this morning.
Good morning, David.
Good
David,
morning.
thank you, and to everyone else. But so yeah, that was a lot of awesome stuff to chew on, and some new stuff. You're right, Vice Mayor, that we probably haven't been talking a lot about. Just additional assets and little crown jewels in the city of Boynton Beach. So thank you very much for that. Let me just start and ask. I'll get right to some of the specific questions here. We got about 15 minutes left, so I think we should be able to get to them. There's a question here, Vice Mayor, about the space. You mentioned 500 Ocean. The space across from 500 Ocean, which would be the northeast corner. Do you know of anything being developed in that area, and might it be tourism related?
So the northeast corner is owned by Davy Camelier, and Davy has received CRA incentive funding, and it's a very common thing we do in the CRA. We provide incentive funding to stimulate redevelopment. And late last year, he came to the commission and said that he's working with partners. He's found partners to redevelop that space. And the designs that I saw included some housing, a potential hotel. And the key word there is potential, because at that point where we last spoke, it was just the beginning of those relationships for him. So there is hotels, and that's important, obviously, in tourism. I don't think we have enough hotels in the city. But with COVID, I have to be honest, I'm not so sure whether or not that will start this year. It'll probably be pushed out because of COVID, but that is the original design that I saw for that parcel. Northeast, you said, right?
Yeah, northeast. Yeah.
Northeast,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. This relates to the city specifically. And are there any city departments that are technically closed right now due to COVID? I know we heard from Manager Leverrier last week talking about folks working remote, and that is certainly the case. But I guess, are all operations of the city open right now to your knowledge? And I guess David Scott could hop on if you needed it.
Absolutely. So our city is fully operational. We are a full service city. That means, we do our own sanitation, we do our own utilities, at least water, and every department is open. People are working remotely, but city operations has continued. It has not stopped. So that's a very good thing. Now, we have made some changes. For example, in the development department, if you have to come to City Hall, if it's something that you can drop off and we'll pick up, that's one of the things that we're doing. If it's something you can email, that's the new preferred route. But everything is still operational. People are still getting building permits, and people are still, of course, working with our utilities, for example. And can I just make a note about our utilities? I'm really proud to say, and this is something that really hasn't gotten attention either, that when COVID happened, there was a lot of fear that, people are going to fall behind on their bills, and that we may be shutting off their waters. And I'm just so happy and proud to know that our staff is compassionate and understanding. And so, we're not turning off people's waters, because obviously that would only exacerbate this public health emergency. What we are doing is we're working with people to create payment plans or whatever options are available to help them get through this time. And so they don't have to be worried about water shutoffs, because that's the exact opposite of what we want to do. But to circle back to your original question, fully operational with some minor changes.
Great.
David, did you want to add on to city operations?
And David also has a question too, so this could be a good twofer here.
Thank you. Absolutely, Vice Mayor. As you mentioned, the city operations have continued. We haven't missed a beat. COVID situation has pushed us into what I say the 21st century. We're having to do more things remotely that we haven't had, and that's that's city government. We're slow to change. But I'm excited to say, because of our staff and our energy and our leadership, both from the commission and our city manager, we are able to increase our technology. So some of the things you mentioned, like online permitting, have been pushed forward. So you'll see more options. So no longer do you have to come in. You'll now be able to use different options that will be available to you through the city, and do more online permitting or online opportunities. One of the things that we would like to mention, as you talk about increasing the city and the businesses, BTRs are up, so people are still opening. So BTR, we've watched that trend, and people are still filing for licenses to operate within the city.
Very good
One of the things that I would like the Vice Mayor to touch on, and the leadership from the commission, has been very helpful for a strong. Makes my job easier from economic development, because they really are excited about the growth in the city and investing. Commissioner, Vice Mayor, you mentioned City Hall. If you could speak to the incubator that you and the commissioners have pushed, and the investment that you supported me with through our entrepreneurship grant. And in fact, for the people on this call, not only did I come forward and I said we have $50,000 a year for entrepreneurship and startups, Vice Mayor said, can we do more? So I'd like you, Vice Mayor, if you just touch on that, because you really have been pushing startups and support around small businesses.
Absolutely. And I mentioned this earlier. And David, I do have to preface this by saying that because Commissioner Hay is on the call, I have to, for sunshine reasons, I have to be careful with what I say. But I have mentioned it earlier. where one of the defining characteristics of our city is that we're a city of small businesses. We're just not the corporate mecca, right? You know, and it is what it is, and it's a good thing also that we are a city of small businesses, because it's a city of entrepreneurs, people that want to have franchises, people that want to build their own business, and we need to encourage more of that because so many jobs are provided by small businesses. And so I'm excited to know that part of our new City Hall library complex is also an incubator space. And so I'm looking forward to investing more in that and just entrepreneurship in general. You know, one of the things I like about the Chamber is that they do this competition, and perhaps we could model and work with all of you to bring that into Boynton, because we can work with our young high school students. We should start early and build that pipeline, right? Because these are skills that just aren't covered in our schools, and I wish they were. But that's where the city and the Chamber and other organizations can partner together to stimulate the spirit of entrepreneurship. And so generally, I'm obviously very supportive of incubation and incubator spaces. And for sunshine reasons, I'll leave it there, David. But I'm very excited to to keep pushing that forward, because it is one of the defining hallmarks of our city. And in addition to that, we have Hack Lab in my district, which encourages also entrepreneurship and building prototypes and starting businesses like that. So ultimately, we're going to connect all these pieces together, and we're going to create a network. And I'm excited.
Great. Thank you, David. Thank you, Vice Mayor. David mentioned, how, maybe generally speaking, governments don't work very fast. I want to give great credit to the city of Boynton, to their elected leadership, to the executive leadership.
Right.
You guys have moved quite quickly, in my view. And again, you came out, you guys were leaders in the county, in South Florida, when it came to identifying those critical funding needs for small businesses in the CRA, in the city. So kudos to that. I think you're moving at a good clip, and keep it up for sure. So
thank you, Troy.
Yeah, and speaking of funding, Vice Mayor, you brought up earlier the exciting news of the CDGB opportunity. And
right.
Still very early in the process. I think you mentioned 350,000.
350,000, and that's going to be brought to the commission, because the exact details of the program is still to be determined. What exactly are the increments? Who's going to get it? What are the criteria?
Do you know, Vice Mayor, if it'll be citywide or?
It will be citywide.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
CDBG
So
grants are for the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's great news. Well, again, add to all of the things that you've mentioned, the financial assistance. I really think you guys are being a leader in that space during these times that we could have never anticipated. And in a city of small businesses, as you described, this type of funding is more critical than ever.
Troy, can I also mention, because I'm not sure if this was mentioned before, in the previous events, but in addition to the financial support, our city is doing some other things to help businesses. So, for example, we have these very strict code regulations regarding signs, and so we've temporarily halted that, because if you need to put a banner out on the street, do it. Let people know that you are open for business, and we don't want to make it harder for you to rebound. We want to make it easier for you to recover from this. And so even as simple as signs, we want you to do that. And on top of that, if you need to put out a few tables just in the parking lot, right in the parking spaces right in front of you, do that. Because obviously if you're outside, you're able to A, increase your capacity, and B, you're able to distance the tables. So it's a win-win. And so just even these small things cumulatively, we want to do as many things as we can to help our business community rebound. When they rebound, we're keeping people employed. And people need to remember that, yes, obviously health is number one. So we have to follow all the CDC guidelines, but lives and livelihoods go hand in hand. If people aren't working, they're not paying their medical bills. They're not getting the medicines that they need. And so we have to be working hand in hand to meet both demands. And so we're making lots of progress in that direction as well.
Great. There is, speaking of, sort of a city of small businesses and corporate headquarters, there is a question here that just asks, is there, a long-term strategy in Boynton Beach, or one that you're thinking of perhaps, Vice Mayor, that does take a look at attracting some more significant major employers down the road? Again, Boynton is special and unique in its own DNA, for sure, and we all realize that, and no one wants to change the unique DNA of Boynton Beach. But are there any of those strategic conversations down the road to say, perhaps allocating certain funding or incentive type opportunities to look at maybe some major employers down the road?
So I do have some thoughts on that, but again, for sunshine reasons, I can't get into details. But David, if you say it, David, I think it's okay if you say it. But the only thing I'll say for now along those lines, because it's still it's general enough, is that we have a lot of, I would actually, let me take that back. It's not a lot. We have a few large buildings. And so when companies decide to move in anywhere, they ask a couple of questions. And one of the questions they ask is, are you shovel ready? Do you have large parcels of land that we could build something on? And the answer for our city is no. We are, we're very limited on that. But do you have move-in ready buildings? And so we do have a few. We have the former Toys R Us building, and as some other buildings go out of business, that's an opportunity. If you want to think of it on the positive side, it's an opportunity for redevelopment. And so preserving some of these large spaces, because that's what these companies look for, move-in ready or shovel ready. We don't have a lot of shovel ready parcels, but we do have a few key jewels in terms of move-in ready buildings. But David, if you want to jump on and add to it.
Sure. And actually, as you said, Vice Mayor, it's really important that we create the environment where the companies want to move to. So you mentioned earlier affordable housing. So we have to make sure our housing stock remains affordable, so that the employees and the labor that attracts the businesses in the first place is already here. They also look for ready skill sets, ready spaces, and whatever we can do to make it easy for them to make that decision. In addition, we partner with the BDB, the Business Development Board of Palm Beach County. And so as we work closely with the other economic development stakeholders and partners throughout the region, we're right in line with that. So when a business does approach us or approach the BDB, we're in the mix. We're part of that conversation. We also put together a tourism task force that includes a lot of businesses and local members that are really invested in Boynton and coming up with strategies around what's next. So we're really working together on that, as you mentioned, Vice Mayor, ecosystem to support our local businesses and make sure that Boynton is positioned and prepared to really market ourselves and to be a place where the businesses want to relocate to or start here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, as I anticipated, Vice Mayor, it's already 9:30. An hour has flown by. When you're talking about great stuff, and we have this morning, time flies by pretty quick. We're gonna stay on time and be respectful of everyone's time this morning. But David, thank you for joining as always. Commissioner Hay, if you're still on, thank you. But Vice Mayor Penserga, we're, as I mentioned earlier, we're excited to work work with you alongside your commission to continue to watch Boynton grow, continue to prosper. Excited to be a part of that and to be a part and a partner of that. We can't thank you enough for your support, understanding the needs of business, and getting reelected back up onto the commission is critical to continue the future prosperity of the city of Boynton Beach. So Thank you very much for joining. Thanks everyone for coming on the Zoom call and joining the committee meeting this morning. We're going to see you very soon. The Chamber will continue to provide these types of educational and information-packed opportunities virtually. Hopefully sooner than later, you'll see some opportunities to get back together in a very appropriate physical distanced way. But we're looking at those things now, and we'll certainly keep you posted. But we're going to do this for as long as we need to before we can shake a hand again. So again, thanks to everybody. Enjoy the rest of the week and stay safe out there. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chamber.